Hey guys, I'm Dav, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer Online action. We're in a battle replay with myself, playing as Norsca. We're going to be facing off against a Dwarfs opponent. So we'll go ahead and go over the army compositions. My army is led by Wulfrik the Wanderer on a chariot. He's carrying Seafang, Hunter of Champions, Standard Die, as well as Foe Seeker. And of course, on the chariot, he is an absolute menace to the Dwarves, and definitely expecting a lot out of him this game. We've also got a Famir Balefiend with the Lore of Shadows, so he'll be doing some armor sundering in melee. He's also carrying, of course, the map-wide speed buff, missile resistance, as well as the Withering. So, the Withering is a great spell against the Dwarfs, in my opinion. Minus 30 armor is, always a good time, and minus 8 leadership can be good in the right circumstances. While the Dwarfs do have very high leadership, if they're very low and you get this on them, it can definitely help rout them off. We've also got a Famir with just regular Famir warrior here, and another on this flank here. This is actually the Regiment of Renown, Miststalkers. We've also got two Marauder Berserkers on each flank, one of them being the Brutes of the Hound. So the idea here is you stack the Famir warriors on top of the Marauder Berserkers, and they can take out high armor, high value units. Here in the center, just three Marauders with great weapons, just for some armor piercing, cheap fodder. We've also got two Ice Wolf chariots. These things are pretty decent. They're got Frostbite, 53 weapon strength with only 13 armor piercing, but a plus 18 bonus versus infantry, so pretty decent. They also have these armor piercing missiles that they'll occasionally chuck. They have like the throwing axes, but interesting unit overall. Chariots are always good against the dwarfs, and the Frostbite especially. It can help slow down the already very slow dwarf units, so very good stuff. And yeah, that's about it for me. For my opponent's build, I really like this. He's got two Dwarf Warriors here in the center to break the charge, one additional on each flank there, slightly staggered. And then right behind them, he's got three Iron Breakers, so definitely going to be looking to chuck some blasting charges and have a very resilient kind of second line here. On the flanks, he's got the Miners with blasting charges, so again, definitely going to be throwing a lot of explosives, which is always a good time. He's got one Grudge Thrower here, two Longbeards in reserve, two Quarrelers, looks like, two Thanes. So the Thanes are interesting because I believe if they're braced, they have a hard time getting knocked over by chariots, so they can potentially help stop, high mass units. He's also got a Rune Lord up on the anvil. He's carrying the Master Rune of Negation, Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin, and the Rune of Oath and Steel, as well as Locus of Power. So that's giving him a map-wide 15% magic resistance, which, although I haven't brought any direct damage magic spells, the Famir Warriors do have magic attacks in addition to the armor sundering, so it will help mitigate their damage somewhat. So if we go ahead and look, for example, on these Dwarf Warriors, they have their baseline plus the Locus of Power, so they're up to plus 40% magic resistance. So it's very good. Definitely like that ability. So it can be good. Although putting the Rune Lord up on the anvil does make him a somewhat more vulnerable target. So you got to be a bit careful. He can take more charge damage that way. But we're just advancing the main line here, and Wulfrik's going to get in, take some early blasting charges right to the face. This is probably not great, but he didn't take a ton of damage. But maybe about 5 to 10% of his HP there. So interesting stuff. And he is getting shot by the Quarrelers as well, so definitely going to want to get out of here. I was just trying to line up a good Seafang on this flank, but didn't quite get it off quite right. You can see it comes through, deals a bit of damage to those Dwarf Warriors, nothing overly substantial, but I was really hoping to get it right along the line of these Iron Breakers. But we'll get in close here for some blasting charge action as these Iron Breakers light up the Marauders as they're running in. And one of the things about the blasting charges is not only do they deal damage, but they also stagger infantry like this. So when they get in their charge, you can see they're not getting all their unit models in at once. But you can see the pain trains rolling in on the flanks now, though. We've got the Famir in here, sundering armor, combined with the Marauders, going to be working through these Dwarf Warriors very fast. Here in the center, the blasting charges are making mincemeat of my Marauders, which is a bit unfortunate, so we're definitely going to be losing this fight. Over here on this flank, we are getting into these Miners now, and they're going to get collapsed super hard by the Brutes of the Hound and by these other Marauders and the Miststalkers here. It looks like I actually missed the attack order, but they'll be getting in here shortly. We have the Rune Lords dropping off some buffs here. Here in the back, unfortunately, my Ice Wolf Chariots did get somewhat caught up, so I noticed the pathing on these guys is a little bit awkward, like sometimes they get stuck. Like you can see, this one here is stuck. These guys managed to pull away, but Just continuing to work through these miners on this flank. My opponent's going to be activating these Iron Breakers fairly soon, since his front line's getting pretty tattered. All those Dwarf Warriors, you know, with the help of the blasting charges, we're able to see the Marauders off. You can see another Sea Fang going off there. It didn't do a ton of damage. Actually, it was a clean miss right on this flank, so nothing overly important there. But you can see the Famir and the Dwarfs. It's going to be a very atrocious trade because the Dwarfs haven't brought much armor piercing, and the Famir do have 110 armor, so it's going to take them quite a while to chop through each other, you know, with the magic resistance of the Dwarves. You can see another upgraded Withering, so if you overcast, it actually will affect an area. So you can see these Iron Breakers are at 25 armor now between the Withering, or excuse me, that's the Dwarf Warriors. They're at 60 armor, I believe. Yep, 60 armor on those Iron Breakers between the Famir centering their armor and the Withering. You know, it's definitely getting some good stacking armor debuffs there. Chariot's continuing to ride around and just be a nuisance here. Wulfrik's actually stuck in this combat, which honestly he probably should be trying to pull out and pull around to get some charges, but no big deal there. Over on this flank, it's just a very kind of atrocious, heated engagement where these the Brutes of the Hound are just continuing to hold out. They're getting a bit tattered, but you can see the other group of Marauders getting pretty tattered as well, but they have done quite a bit of damage in return, taking down this Thane, helping take down quite a few Dwarf Warriors and now Iron Breakers. The Miststalkers as well getting in here, doing the armor sundering, and the Terror will be good against, you know, the low-tier Dwarf units. You can see Marauders now getting in for a rear charge, so the surround is going to be very nice. Great Sea Fang clipping right through those Quarrelers, getting some really nice work done. And yeah, looking pretty grim so far. The Dwarves are holding out nicely, and we're just not able to cut through them fast enough. So it's looking to be pretty heated at this point. So the infantry fight over here is starting to kind of turn against me with just the weight of numbers. There's so many Iron Breakers in here, and you know, even with their armor sundered heavily, they still have high melee defense. Still a very tanky unit overall. So it's going to be very tough to chop through them. But you know, we're doing our best here. So another upgraded Withering going down over here, just continuing to try and tear away the armor of these Iron Breakers over here and finish off, you know, the Dwarf Warriors and the Longbeards. This Thane is also going to be in pretty rough shape. We've dropped the Hunter of Champions on him, and Wulfrik's going to now be coming in and getting some good damage done. So, very nice stuff. Wulfrik's racked up quite a few kills already. He's up to 126 and rapidly climbing. His anti-infantry bonus on the Chariot does help him against the Dwarfs quite a bit. Let's see, it's actually a 30 bonus versus infantry, plus 160 armor piercing, so very good stuff. Yeah, you can see this Ice Wolf Chariot just continuing to ride around, getting some decent charges here, decent charges there, just being an absolute nuisance. And, you know, these guys with their anti-infantry and the charge damage, very good against the Dwarves. So you can see this is fight's just continuing to drag on. You can see the Dwarves trying to drag down these Famir, but the Bale Fiend, you know, since he doesn't have too much armor, he's taking quite a bit of damage. You can see he's actually about to rout off, so I do pull him back. And Wulfrik now has sprung free. He's going to be helping out these Chariots. Bit of a traffic accident here, but no big deal. They're still going to be able to get in, get a okay charge there, but Wulfrik's going to get a beautiful charge right into the back of these Iron Breakers. Very good stuff, right into that high-value unit. And over here, this fight's just continuing to drag on. The Brutes of the Hound are barely hanging on with 4 unit models, and the Famir Miststalkers are actually wavering now, going to be routing off shortly. So this flank, my opponent has pretty decisively won, and this flank I'm going to be cleaning up here shortly. The Marauders are, I'm surprised, actually standing in here. The Enrage is definitely helping them, you know, keep their leadership up and, you know, give them the physical resistance and everything. So, see a lot of the Dawi forces, though, now routing, and it's going to be pretty tough. My forces are very tattered as well, but, you know, it's definitely going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight to the finish on this one. So, you can see the balance of power tipping slightly in my favor now as we mop up these Iron Breakers and a lot of these lower-tier units, these Longbeards and the Miners over here. So this Grudge Thrower did try and come back, but you know, we got the Ice Wolf Chariot on the crew and routed him off again. So now we're just I'm pulling away my forces as I attempt to shatter these last few units over here, and then we're going to line up for a final engagement with the Dawi. So we'll go ahead and fast forward for just a minute here as we do so. So you can see they actually caught those Marauders with great weapons and almost routed them off. But now we're going to get back in, and this is it now. This is for all the marbles. And the Famir are in here. They're bashing the Dawi around, but the Dawi, you know, they're giving it right back. And the armor piercing of the Miners, when they're mixed in with the Iron Breakers like this, will actually help take down the Famir warriors, so it's going to be pretty decent there. Rune Lord's continuing to fight. He is getting targeted somewhat by Wulfrik, so that's a bit unfortunate, but, you know, since he's not quote-unquote infantry, he won't take quite as much damage from Wulfrik, but you can see the Famir in here. Famir Battlefiend is still fighting, despite being very, very low. Takes a hit there and goes down to 228 HP. That is going to be enough to rout him off, unfortunately. But, you know, we are continuing to just try and whittle away at what Dawi forces are left. This chariot is chasing away some Quarrelers. Probably not great. We're going to be bringing him back around shortly. Wulfrik's just been pulling back in, doing lots of nice cycle charging. The Miststalkers did come back from routing, so they're going to get in here. And the Terror, I think most of these units are immune to psychology, but yeah, it looks like the, of course, Ironbreakers are immune to psychology, and yeah, the Miner's getting routed off, but at this point it's pretty much just the Ironbreakers left. There's the one unit of Dwarf Warriors, as well as the Thane and the Rune Lord, so you can see the Rune Lord's smacking these Famir around, trying to take him down, but Wulfrik's in here as well. He's going to be trying to get some attack animations from the back of the chariot, but it's a little bit awkward, the attack animations on the chariot. It's okay, though. You know, he's up to 220 kills, so he's gotten a ton of work done. And this Marauder Ice Wolf chariot's got 104 kills, so definitely decent there. They do have an XP chevron, it looks like, as well, so good stuff. You can see, finally, the last of my infantry routing off. The Runes of Wrath and Ruin chasing away the Famir as they take damage. So, going to be a bit rough. We'll go ahead and fast forward as I pull around for another cycle. And at this point, the name of the game is just to try and cycle charge the Dwarfs to death. And so we're going to do exactly that, dropping the Hunter of Champions on the Rune Lord, and going to be getting in here with Wulfrik. And again, the attack animations are a little bit awkward, but it does allow these guys to get a really, really nice charge in on the side there. And going to be very, very rough for my opponent. Still racking up kills to up to 229. Each of those splash attacks, it looks like, has taken out a few unit models. So 110 on those Ice Wolf chariots, and yeah, that's my opponent does admit defeat. So, very fun game. Knockdown, drag-out fight with the Dawi. Always a good time. I really, really like this build for my opponent. You know, using the blasting charges is something that when I used to play the Dwarves more frequently, you know, back in the earlier patches, I really liked this kind of strategy of layering, you know, miners with blasting charges and Ironbreakers, kind of layering them into a secondary line. And, you know, using the blasting charges to really good effect and then kind of wearing the enemy down through attrition. It can be very good. You know, if I didn't have Wulfrik on a chariot, I probably would have lost that, to be honest. But you can see this this chariot here, 110 kills, 1 chevron. This one got a ton of work done. This other chariot is the one that kind of got stuck on that awkward path thing and just kind of got taken down. So they didn't do a lot. But you can see here, 131 kills on Marauder Berserkers. That would only be possible with the Famir and with the Balefiend, you know, sundering the armor. 229 on Wulfrik is legit, man. He's an absolute monster against the Dawi on the chariot, so very good stuff. Yeah, for my opponent, the Ironbreakers, again, absolute MVPs. I would probably fine-tune this build if I were going to use a variation of it a little bit. I'd probably cut one of the Thanes and then use the leftover funds to get these guys to the Great Weapon variants, because if he had Longbeards with Great Weapons, they would have been a lot better against the Famir. And then maybe change out these for just Rangers, use the leftover money to upgrade this to the Goblobber, just because it has that nice armor debuff, or excuse me, the leadership debuff. But yeah, very nice build for my opponent. I really, really like this. Unfortunately, it couldn't quite stand up to what I had, but very atrocious fight. Very well played to my opponent. Hope you guys enjoyed watching that. I sure enjoyed playing it. If you're liking the content, like and subscribe. I definitely appreciate the support. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.